A lot of times when watching fantasy football content, you'll hear people use the term stacks, right? They want to have a stack in their lineup. And stacks they're important in the world nowadays, right? We have people who decorate their yard landscape with stacked stone. We have people that really enjoy the Wendy's double stack. Don't profile me. Because really, the favorite stack that I have is the stack of cash that I win playing fantasy football every year, because then I can just turn on a YouTube video and make it rain. Happy 4th of July, Headliner Nation. Hopefully you guys are having a great, fun, and safe July 4th here so far. I got my own things to do later today, but had to hop on first to make sure we dropped a little bit of knowledge for you today as well. Plus, I have a couple draft guides that I have to give away. You guys have been knocking like goals out of the park on these videos as of late, so I gotta reward the people, right? We have 2 winners that were randomly selected from videos last week. It's C.W. Leonard and Ben Schwinn. Congratulations. Hit me up at info@thefantasyheadliners.com. I'll get you hooked up with the free draft guide, but it's a holiday, right? We gotta do something special here for the holiday. How about a discount? How about a sale on the draft guide? That's right, we're using a discount code July 4. If you use that code at checkout between now and midnight on July 5th Eastern time, you're gonna get 10% off your draft guide as a little bit of a holiday special here. People are already starting to drop their reviews on the draft guide, getting a ton of great feedback. If you're wondering whether or not you should get one, just look down in the comment section, because in every video we have people talking about how much they love the draft guide. If this video can get over 1,000 likes, I'll give away another draft guide to somebody who leaves a comment down below in the comment section. I'll pick that random winner probably next week with as quickly as you guys are hitting these like goals. But okay, let's talk about some fantasy football stacks. Now, each section that I'm going to be talking about here today, I'm also going to assign a hashtag to. I do that so that you guys can vote down below in the comment section which hashtag, which group do you like the best. Plus, it's an easy way for you to leave your comment down below, so when we hit the like goal, you have an opportunity to win. Now, first off, when it comes to stacks, please only stack players that are on the best offenses in the NFL. Don't stack players from teams who have offenses that just suck huevos. It's not worth it. If I'm doing a double stack and it includes a quarterback, I gotta have that stack score at least 30 points a week. If it's a triple stack, I'm looking for at least 40 points per week. But there's also those types of stacks that don't include quarterbacks, and really, 20 points is the minimum for one of those stacks. If I'm being honest, I'm trying to get 24 points per week plus. But let's go ahead here and let's pull up our first set of stacks. And these ones right here, I'm labeling as hashtag big money stacks because they're going to be expensive on draft day. But these are the top stacks right now when you're looking at quarterbacks and wide receivers. Now, if we look at their production from just last year, we're going to get a good gauge of what we can kind of expect this year. But once we really take a look at 2023, how are these stacks going to differentiate, right? Are they going to get better? Are they going to get worse? What changed this offseason to make it any different? So the first one up we have here is Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Last year, they're stacked 40.6 fantasy points per game. I told you I was looking for 30 plus. 40 plus on a 2-stack? I'll take that all day long. How about the super stack itself, right? Mahomes and Kelsey, 40.6. Did a lot of people realize that Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown tied Mahomes and Kelsey when it comes to fantasy points per game in stacks? What about Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, 39.9, on the verge of 40 points per game. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, 37 fantasy points per game. And then Kirk Cousins, I know a lot of people hate Kirk Cousins, but him and Justin Jefferson, 35.9 fantasy points per game. These were the top 5 scoring stacks just last season. And honestly, by looking at what we have going into this year, none of this is really going to change a whole lot, right? No more Adam Thielen in Minnesota, but we got Jordan Addison. We know Justin Jefferson's going to get his. Jamar Chase and the Bengals, not a whole lot has really changed there. What about Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs? No, Buffalo, a lot of the same, right? Mahomes and Kelsey, we know is a mainstay. Hurts and A.J. Brown probably going to be pretty productive again. Perfect. Pretty expensive. But what happens when we look just outside the top 5? Are there any of these guys that maybe are a little bit cheaper that we can still complete a stack with? Yeah, there is. What about Tua and Tyreek Hill? Sure, Tyreek is expensive, but you know Tua going to be cheap. They average 35 fantasy points per game, only 0.9 points less than Cousins and Jefferson. How about Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, 32.4, and then Matthew Stafford Stafford and Cooper Kupp, right? We know Cooper Kupp way up there in the first round again, but a lot of people have written off Matthew Stafford, 31.1 fantasy points per game, and really this offense in LA, if anything, is only going to go even more through Cooper Kupp because there's not a whole lot to really work with to begin with. So if you like any of these, if this is the direction you're going, make sure you leave big money stacks, hashtag big money stacks down below, and let me know which one of these you like the best. All right, let's go down to the next one now. How about we go down? This is going to be a quarterback and the second best option, right? Not their wide receiver one, the second best option. We're going to call this one hashtag dollar bin because it's a little bit cheaper of a player that you can get to complete this stack. First up, we got the same quarterbacks. For the most, we know these guys. They score so many points at the quarterback position. You know they're going to be at the top of all these metrics. What about Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith? So instead of going A.J. Brown super early, we get Devontae Smith a little bit later, and we see that this stack still scored 37.8 points per game. I mean, we had 40.6 per game for A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, so it's really not that big of a difference to get somebody a little bit later in the draft and still have a big-time stack. What about Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler? These two combined for 35.8 fantasy points per game, and I think we can all say the offense this year probably going to be a little bit better in LA. Does Austin Eckler maybe regress a little bit? Sure, he probably will. But Justin Herbert's in line for a big improvement, and they'll more than likely cancel each other out. Still a great stack to have. Burrow and T. Higgins, 34.1 fantasy points per game. Not bad whatsoever. Higgins going to be cheaper than Chase. What about Patrick Mahomes and Isaiah Pacheco? Have you even thought about that stack yet? What if you could really corner the market when it comes to Kansas City touchdowns? You're going to get the touchdowns through the air from Mahomes. You're going to get the majority of them on the ground from Pacheco. And just last year, 32.8 fantasy points per game with everything really trending up. For Pacheco this year to have a better season, that's a stack that I think a lot of people need to pay attention to. How about Josh Allen and Damian Harris? Crazy to even think about that. Last year, they would have only averaged 31.7 fantasy points per game. But now Damian Harris is going to be the early down running back in Buffalo, and he's going to get all the goal line opportunities, could have himself a quote-unquote Jamal Williams type of season. We could see that number increase, and he's super cheap on draft day. The guys that are just outside of this 31.7 points by Allen and Harris, we have Tua and Jalen Waddle at 31.4. So they're basically right there. We also have Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper at 30.9. I could see this one maybe trending down a little bit, but only because Amari Cooper has more people to share work with. It's no longer just Amari Cooper. They drafted Cedric Tillman. They brought over Elijah Moore. We still have Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Njoku, Nick Chubb in the backfield, but still a solid stack. And then lastly, what about Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett at 30.7 points? Now, why didn't I include DK Metcalf? Because Tyler Lockett scores more damn touchdowns almost every single year than DK Metcalf. Dude deserves some respect. They're at 30.7. But that offense has added JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, out of Ohio State, so they could slightly regress as well. But honestly, with the discount that you can get from some of these stacks, I don't mind them so I'll hit the dollar bin here at times in 2023. That is for sure. All right. Now, I said we would do some triple stacks. Triple stacks pretty freaking crazy, right? There's really only a couple teams I would probably do this with. Very few teams, to be honest, that you could probably actually pull it off, right? Sure, there's some that you'd probably want to have, but there's no way you'd be able to probably get a Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb. Probably not going to happen. So how about Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and DeAndre Swift? What if DeAndre Swift pops off? I know we say that every freaking year, but he's not going to be super expensive on draft day. He could rack up some touchdowns on the ground, and then we capture that huge stack of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I mean, just based off of last year's numbers with Swift in Detroit, that stack would have 52.5 fantasy points per game. I like it a lot. What about Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Joe Mixon? Because Mixon's going later this year. Another one of those opportunities where we capture all the touchdowns through the air and a lot of them on the ground as well. Last year, that stack would have scored right around 51 fantasy points per game. Then we go down to Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Austin Eckler. 48.9 points per game. I like all of these, right? Remember, if we're talking about it at the very beginning of the show, if we're going for a triple stack, they got to score 40 plus. All these guys well into the 40s. Then we have, how about a stack of Mahomes, Kelsey, and Isaiah Pacheco? Another one of those instances where I said, maybe we should pay attention to this one pretty close this year. I think we could see that improvement from Isaiah Pacheco this year, and they could challenge for that top spot. They're definitely trending up when it comes to this triple stack. And then in Minnesota, what about Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Alexander Mattison? You could end up with all three of those guys, averaging right around 47.9, but really Mattison in line for a huge bump this year. So they could definitely get close to that 50 mark as well. Another triple stack I would probably be okay with. But what about those ones that are just on the outside looking in from these top five? Well, we have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Damian Harris. They're at 47.4. And like we've said, Damian Harris trending up right now. How about a Detroit stack? Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, obviously, we have really no idea what Gibbs is going to do, but if we just give him a modest number, you're looking at almost 42.5 points per game, and there's that opportunity that he absolutely pops off. That could be a sneaky stack here this year. What about Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, and Travis Etienne? Now, obviously, we really don't know what to expect from Calvin Ridley, but if we kind of pencil him in there for like 12 points a game, kind of like what we just did with Jahmyr Gibbs, just a modest number, right? Nothing crazy low, crazy high. It's going to put him in the neighborhood of 40.9 fantasy points per game, right there on the verge of that 40 plus. And if Calvin Ridley does come back to what he was in this league a couple years ago, that number is going to skyrocket. And then lastly, what about a Jets triple stack? You could end up with Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall. Now this one right here, 40.1 fantasy points per game. Obviously, we think that Aaron Rodgers has an opportunity for increased production. Garrett Wilson, a huge opportunity for increased production. Breece Hall, I don't know if we're going to have a huge opportunity from increased production because the guy already averaged like 15 fantasy points per game before getting hurt last year. And I don't know if we can really expect a lot more than that number. That's still pretty high. If anything, it could come down a little bit, but I could definitely see this number of 40.1 being a little bit higher. So like I said, if you like the triple stacks, throw me that hashtag supercar down below. But now let's take a look at some unconventional stacks. And for this one, I assigned it hashtag oddly enjoyable. Because when you think of stacks, you think of quarterback, wide receiver. But in this case, there's some that kind of caught my attention that score some points that maybe we should pay attention to as well. How about Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler? 31.9 fantasy points per game. Remember, I said I'm shooting for anything 24 plus, right? 20 is really the cutoff because you want at least to score double digits, but I'm trying to find those above average stacks. So I'm looking for 24 plus. 31.9 from Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. Love that. Justin Jefferson, Alexander Mattison at 29.9. Mattison in line for a bump here this year. What about a couple San Francisco stacks? We got CMC and George Kittle at 29.9 and CMC and Brandon Ayuk at 29.6. If you find yourself with CMC early, it's not a bad idea to follow it up with another guy in a good offense in San Francisco that has some touchdown upside in either George Kittle or Brandon Ayuk. We've talked about Jamar Chase in numerous stacks. How about him and Joe Mixon? 29.3. No more Samaje Perine. Does Mixon see a bump? How about a Cleveland stack with Nick Chubb and Amari Cooper? Last year, this duo averaged 28 fantasy points per game. Like I said earlier, could come down a little bit, but we also may see a slight improvement from Nick Chubb. Now that there's no Kareem Hunt in this backfield, this could really even out, be right around 28 to 30 points per game. Cooper Kupp and Cam Akers. I'm not a huge Cam Akers guy, but these two average 27.2 fantasy points per game. Largely loaded on the Cooper Kupp side, right? He was off to a huge start once again last year. Really no reason why he can't come off to another huge start this year. No one else to really throw it to in LA consistently. You know he's going to get peppered. How about AJ Brown and DeAndre Swift? 26.9 fantasy points per game. Amon-Ra and Gibbs estimating right around 25 fantasy points per game, even more if Gibbs does pop off. And then that Jet stack, we have Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, 25.3, going to be pretty close to that number, I believe. I do, like I said, think that Breece Hall, his points per game average comes down a little bit, really kind of evening things out. The guys that were on the outside looking in here, Tyler Lockett and Kenneth Walker, 24.8 fantasy points per game, slight trending down arrow because of the way that they added JSN. How about Aaron Jones and Christian Watson at 23.2, Diggs and Damian Harris at 23.2. But like I said, Damian Harris expected to trend up. That number could increase. Just a Kelsey Pacheco stack, 23 fantasy points per game. How about Ridley and Etienne at 23? Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson at 20 fantasy points per game. But I think we all can agree that this offense in Pittsburgh this year gonna be a little bit better, right? So obviously these are some numbers that could climb as well. They hit that 20 fantasy point per game threshold, but that's another combination that I think can really climb above that 24 point that we're really looking for. So which is your favorite? Was it the ones right off the start, the hashtag big money stack? Do you like the slight discount with the hashtag dollar bin guys? What about hashtag supercard? You going for a triple stack with any team here this year? And then lastly, hashtag oddly enjoyable, a few stacks that really aren't very mainstream because they don't include quarterbacks, but they have the opportunity to go out and put up some pretty solid points. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you have to have stacks to win in fantasy football, because really, that's not the case. Sure, there are going to be a few that are very beneficial, but the last time I checked, the entire purpose and point of playing fantasy football is to score the most points. We're always trying to draft the guys that score the most points. Do I ever reach to make a stack happen? No. But if I have an opportunity to stack two players from some of the best offenses in the NFL, I will stack time and again. Triple stacking, that's a lot riding on one game each and every week. I'm not big on triple stacking, if I'm being completely honest. I'm more of a double stack guy. Oh, here we go back to the Wendy's comment to begin with, but I'm sure you all have fun with that down in the comment section. But that dollar bin area, that big money stack, that oddly satisfying, that's where I really live in fantasy football, but I don't force anything. Don't ever force anything in your drafts. If it comes to you that way, take advantage of it. But if it doesn't, and it doesn't work out, and you look down at your roster at the end of your draft and you have no stacks, it's okay. You still have just as good a chance of walking away with a fantasy football trophy as everyone else in your league at that point. But now it's time to go out and enjoy the festivities of 4th of July. Like I said, hopefully you guys have a great, fun, enjoyable, and safe 4th of July out there. We greatly appreciate all of your support out there. Don't forget, 1,000 likes on this video, I'll pick another random winner from down below in the comment section to give away a free draft guide to once we hit that 1,000 like goal here, which is probably going to happen super quick. But for now, I'm going to get out of here for the day. Enjoy the rest of yours, and then do your part to make the world a better place.